Hello everybody, welcome to the Wonky Angle, where I talk about electronic music, both new and old. And today I'm talking about the new album from carbon-based Lifeforms, Derelicts. Carbon-based Lifeforms is the duo of Johannes Hedberg and Daniel Segerstad. Sorry for butchered pronunciations as per usual. Now these guys were once mainstays of Ultimae Records, an indie label who released a crap ton of amazing ambient and techno and trance albums and compilations. I'd had my period at the beginning of my college years when I felt like this label could do no wrong. They had so many artists that I thought were awesome. Solar Fields, Ace Dana, Asura, Huva Network, even lesser known names like Hole Bauman, Cell, Hybrid Leisureland, James Murray, iAwake, Circular, Connect.Ohm. Seriously, so much talent on this label, my god. That being said, while they seemed like the greatest thing ever when I really got into them circa 2014, there have been a few problems, and one of them is that their previous two biggest names, Solar Fields and these guys, CBL, broke off the label entirely to hopefully find their own individual successes. Which is a shame, as they have consistently impressed me with what they've been doing, and now they've decided they don't want to keep it all in the same place as the other Ultimate guys. Well. Also, CBL themselves hadn't actually released a mainline album in a long time. Last one was 2012. So, while I'm on that topic, how about I go down their discography so far? An ambient techno masterpiece and absolutely essential listen, with 11 tracks which are each unique and memorable in their own right, yet still fit together perfectly, just shy of my top 20 favorite of all time as I may remember. Probably the best thing that ever came out of Ultimae Records for me, and that should really be saying something. Also, it's the most expensive CD that I have in my collection. I shelled out $80 for this thing. Still worth it. Admittedly not quite as strong an album as Hydroponic Garden, as there's more than a few tracks that pass by without me noticing at all, but it's still a very well put together ambient album that is absolutely worth your time as well. I think this one's better than World of Sleepers. They went for a more epic Solar Fields-esque approach with this one, and it's pretty awesome as well. This one is completely beatless and entirely ambient. While it is probably my least favorite of their albums, it's really not by much. It's a very solid and beautiful album. And there's also an hour-long version of the track VLA from this album, which I personally never really got into, to be honest, but is worth mentioning. Cool album. Also, before I forget, this album, which predates Hydroponic Garden and is kind of like a demo album 0 or something, is pretty darn cool, too. Worth your time. Check it out. It's even free on their Bandcamp page. And also, this is a B-sides collection, which is also cool. So, yeah. Which brings us to here. This is their 5th mainline album to date, and their last one, 23, as I said, came out all the way back in 2012 when Ultimae were more of an active presence. And if I might digress for a moment, while I was pretty excited for this release, it did come with a bit of a damper, as the last Ultimae-related release I was really blown away by was Asura's Radio Universe in 2014. Everything since has been good, but not great, and hasn't showcased the same level of creativity they used to have back in the day. And they've slowed down really significantly too. Like now it's like 1 or 2 releases a year, and with so many underwhelming efforts from less impressive artists like Martin Non-Static or Mictech, and even kind of subpar releases from artists I previously really liked, like Ace Dana and James Murray. Again, they had good releases, but not nearly the same bar as set previously by the label. And now Ultimae seems to be mostly occupying themselves with just re-releasing old stuff. I've just kind of lost my excitement over these guys. I was more excited for this CBL album since they were one of the best names to come out of the label, and even though they've never been able to top Hydroponic Garden, and most likely never will, they have kept their unique sound fresh enough to keep me intrigued in what would come out of a new release of theirs. Their style, while always pretty scientific, felt like it had a lot of life in it. like music to study biology to, which is weirdly specific, but I mean, their name is Carbon-Based Lifeforms. Even though this wasn't a real new release on Ultimae Records, I was still as excited and half treated it as such, hoping that they'd be able to deliver on the more detailed style of the Ultimae sound as the label itself hadn't. Well, okay, they had Scantex Unyit, or however you say that, which delivered on that pretty well too after I came back to it, but whatever. It's you know, they kind of had pressure on them. But question is, did they live up to that? Sort of. Derelicts, of course, delivers on the same style and sounds that CBL are well known for, and they executed it very well, as always. It's a solid album from front to back that stays very true to what they are. But, like, there's not much of anything here they hadn't already done on previous albums. I think my thoughts on this album are actually pretty similar to that new LCD Sound System album, though. It's far from their best work and feels kinda reliant on stuff they've done already, especially Interloper, but I really enjoy their style a lot just by itself, so I'm kind of able to excuse it. I'm not sure if I enjoyed this album as much as that new LCD Sound System. It's kind of hard to say. I mean, it's apples and oranges, but you know, just having James Murphy personality around again was enough to make up for the lack of originality on American Dream right from the get-go, and CBL sound, while amazing, it took me a couple of listens to really fully get over this gripe. Especially since CBL have never been a personality-driven phenomenon or the kind of thing you just love immediately. I'll admit, even Hydroponic Garden took me like 8 or 10 listens before it really fully clicked with me and ended up so high on my favorites of all time list. I think this is a solid album. If it weren't for the fact that CBL already have 3 albums that sound very similar, but I have a much better formed personal attachment to, I'd think Derelicts to be really great stuff. I will admit that Derelicts was at least a grower with repeat listens, but yeah, that is by far my biggest gripe with it. Is basically Interloper 2. I mean, Interloper's a great album, but I don't know. I think people get the idea with this one. I wanted them to find a more distinctive angle on their usual sound, and they didn't. But besides that, and also the lack of a continuous mix, which was a little disappointing too, Derelicts does succeed in everything else I would want out of Carbon-Based Lifeforms. The atmosphere is super spot on, there's a well done attention to detail, the melodies and vocal samples are memorable and engaging. It's just stuff like, why does the track Relay Scatterers have basically the exact same intro as Frog from Interloper? Okay, I know I'm making it sound like this album was a giant letdown for me, and I'm gonna rate it in the 6 range or something. No, I do think this is a very good and possibly even great album. Just with the obvious gripe that I've been mentioning. So, going on track by track, Accede is a good opener in the same vein as Abiogenesis that gets started a lot quicker than that one, has a nice melody. The title track in Equilibrium, while definitely familiar territory, see tracks like Photosynthesis with its catchy voice sample hook. What about the forests? Nope! Here you got Obsolete Technology, Derelict Machine. Gravity may restore equilibrium, movement, back and forth. And while I'm at it, I really like the bouncier and, like, dub-heavy feel of the latter. Kinda reminds me of 01. Nobody here knows who 01 is. Go check them out. Listen to the track Nothing to Fight About at the very least. Some of these tracks have a more epic and Solar Fields-esque approach to their sound, like 780 Days, Loss Aversion, 42 Degrees, and Dodecahedron. I do like the more rock-influenced and banging drums of the former two, which I will admit is not something I've really heard out of CBL before, at least not this crisp sounding, and the latter two have a more driving trance-like feel, which is less surprising, but, you know, still some good fun. And I like the straight ambient tracks like Clouds, Path of Least Resistance, and the closer Everwave. You know, these are admittedly the least engaging sections of the album, perhaps unsurprisingly, and the latter in particular felt like it's maybe stretched the album out a bit too long sometimes, but I think I did eventually get used to it. My favorite track of all of these, though, has to be Nattväsen. or however you say that. But this is the one track that stuck out to me as sounding more unique. It had this kind of more, like, low-key melancholy and childhood nostalgic vibe to it or something, helped by a lot of these little glockenspiel sounds. It does stick out, and I will notice it any time as well. It's like a more innocent version of photosynthesis with its repetitive samples. They were friendly creatures, not at all eaters. I followed them down underground. This is my first now. And also, I did say that the lack of a continuous mix was kind of disappointing, but for the most part, I don't even notice that the tracks aren't actually connected. I'm not sure if this is a good thing or a bad thing. So I guess overall thoughts on this thing. It was not a first listen affair. First listen, I was like, that's it? This just sounds like everything else they've done. But even while that is true, and I would still give their first 3 albums a much higher recommendation as a result, I will say this album was a major grower, and I think I got over it in the end. Like Hydroponic Garden and World of Sleepers before it, I needed a lot of repeat listens for everything to grow on me more, and I'm definitely glad I waited on this one and didn't just try to jump into a review and rush things. Would this get me excited at the prospect of listening to Ultimae Records again? I don't know yet. I mean, just besides the fact that this wasn't actually on Ultimae Records. The release of this album did get me to revisit that Scantech album from last year and realize it was a lot better than I remembered. Maybe some of those other more recent releases, like the Ace Dana one that I thought was disappointing. Maybe those other underwhelming releases might deserve another chance too. Who knows what might happen. But I will say this is an album that has gotten progressively better with each successive listen, and I think I've finally made it to the point where I feel like it just barely crosses over into great territory. I mean, it's a very borderline score right now, but yeah, I'd say I'm overall feeling a solid 8 out of 10. But of course, this is just my opinion. You can feel free to disagree with it, but I'd like to hear your thoughts, so leave comments in the comment thing down there. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all for today. See you next time.